Today we're going to be talking about big data and in particular hidden gems and using data-driven insights to grow revenue. We've got an all-star panel with us today, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce each of us briefly. Myself, again, as Udi mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of a Magento Gold Solutions partner called Blue Acorn. Been in the Magento space for quite some time. But along with me today, we have a few great presenters along board. We have Jim Davidson from Bronto Software. We have Mike Wadkey, a little bit out of order, from Blue Dot, who's an online retailer. Well, not just an online retailer, but a furniture company. Jody Ellis, who's the Director of Marketing with Optimizely. Tim Domke, who's the Head of Big Data at eBay. And Jeff Lawrence, who is the CEO of Granify. So our goal today is to deliver actionable insights on how you can actually use data to grow revenue. Each of the panelists have a great wealth of knowledge, experience, and information and passion about how online retailers can use data to drive revenue. So asking them to condense their presentations down into a very short window of 40 minutes is no easy task. So we're going to do the best we can. We're going to have roughly 5 to 10 minutes at the end for question and answers. So I encourage you, if you don't come out of here with very actionable insights on how you can start using data yourself, I encourage you to challenge us with some questions at the end to get the answers that you might be looking for. So with that, we're going to start off with big data. It's nearly impossible today to talk to anyone about data and analytics without the topic of big data coming up. And the definitions of big data vary greatly from one source to another. There's a definition from Forrester that I rather enjoy in terms of how I define big data, but it's really the frontier of a firm's ability to store, process, and access all the data it needs to make decisions as it pertains to operations, reducing risk, serving customers. We're looking at all the data needed. So this data can come in many different forms. And so I wanted to turn it over to Tim, first of all, and ask, how do we cut through the noise about big data and the buzz that we all hear about, and how do we actually make actionable decisions with the big data that's out there?
Thanks, that's a great place to start. Yeah, there is a lot of noise on the topic of big data, and the press and industry coverage, a lot of distraction around questions like how big is big data, or the tools to manage the problem of big data. And I think that's the more important question, the much more important question, is to stay focused on the business outcomes. Why are you interested in this? Why are you involved at all? And the business outcomes are significant. They go everywhere from personalization and engaging in your customers in new ways to insights. And there are insights in your business that both surprise you, they reveal some new opportunity that you didn't see before, or validate your intuitions. And I think that that's actually one of the most understated values of big data, is validating your intuitions. Saves tremendous amount of time and energy in experimentation in that first little step. So seeing an insight that convinces you that you were right, that's actually worth the effort. So yeah, I think that big data is really cutting through the noise, is about focusing on the outcomes and really focusing not on the size. The size isn't the biggest issue.
Great. Now, Jim, how have you in the email marketing world been able to work with your clients on using big data to actually drive revenue growth?
So, in the email marketing world, big data can really be a little different because you do have your customer's email address and their opt-in, and you're marketing to them in a very specific way. So, for me, big data is really, you have to change the conversation that you're having with your consumer. If you were traditionally just sending out a weekly newsletter with a promotion that lasted through the weekend, that's not really keeping up with the consumer behavior that we see today. We have people using mobile devices, the inbox is on the go with them, they're interacting with our sites in different ways. So really being able to understand that consumer behavior, what data you have that orbits that behavior, and how you can leverage email marketing and automation to really drive sales using that data.
Great. Now, Mike, you manage the online retail operations for Blue Dot. How have you yourself used big data to drive revenue growth for your company?
Great question. I think a lot of it comes down to what Tim was talking about, and it's how do you be relevant in the questions that you're asking yourself. you have to first identify what is the need, what question are you trying to ask, and you have to understand that your answer to that question is just going to open the door for more questions. What we've done is we've tried to segment it so we focus on using data on the front end, customer facing, as well as data on the back end that ultimately will lead to customer facing decisions. So front end, think about traffic and what's happening on the website. Back end, think about purchase funnel and trends within the industry, those types of things. So for us, it's all about being relevant and continuing to refine the questions you're asking and identifying what parts of the big data you need to best answer those questions.
Great. So we look at big data, we talked about it as all of the data that you need to make these very important decisions. And that data can come in the form of what we might categorize as micro level data versus macro level data. Things on a large scale versus things on a very itty bitty scale. So Jeff, we talked previously and you're convinced that turning on a fire hose of data is a powerful use of all the data to drive revenue, but you use the term even beyond what most sane people would consider. How exactly does that work?
Yeah, I always think if you're using data to make decisions, you have to be able to extract stories or patterns that you can actually take action on, because if you can't take action on them, the data is useless. And if you're just looking at macro events, which are really the big things, like someone came to your site, they added something to their cart, they looked at a product, they purchased or they didn't, you're not really getting the full story, and a lot of times that's not actionable. And so looking at micro behaviors is really everything that happens between those big macro events. And that's everything down to like the tiniest mouse movement of a shopper. And the best way to really describe how it can work is for me to give you an example. That's a personal example. I was actually shopping online for a pair of jeans last week. And the story from a macro stat or data perspective is that I went to the website, I added a pair of jeans to my cart, and then I abandoned. I left, I didn't purchase. You can't really do much about that. But if you look at it from a pure micro perspective, the story's a lot different. And so in that scenario, I went to the website, I looked at a few pairs of jeans, I found the one I liked. Then I went to the sizing of it, and I was toggling my mouse between 32 to 33, back to 32, indicating that I had some sort of fit concerns. But I still went forward. I added the 32 as being optimistic, went to the next page, and then I'm on the cart page, and I went and copied the SKU or the product name, and went and opened up another tab. So obviously I'm rate shopping, or I'm potentially looking for a coupon. At that point, I come back a couple minutes later, so now I'm obviously satisfied with the price, and I continue forward into the checkout. Now I'm on the checkout page, and my mouse has gone over the shipping price. I've gone down a little bit lower, gone over total price. Moving the mouse is usually indicative of what you're reading, and that's what I was doing in that case. And so I've gone lower on the page, so I've obviously gone past that point of friction around the shipping costs. I get to the checkout button, and I have my mouse over there for a couple seconds, but then I pull away. And so that's a big red flag. So you can see, looking at it just from a macro perspective, you have this small little chunk that you can't do much with. You look at it from a micro perspective, and you have this very detailed story that you can take action on. In that case, if you have a series of possible actions, showing me a discount at that time isn't going to do anything, because price isn't the concern. We've already established that by my behavior. Shipping cost isn't a concern, so you give me free shipping, it doesn't matter. But if at that moment you told me that if the jeans don't fit, I can refund them, no questions asked, in 30 days, then instantly you have another sale. And that's really the power of using micro behavior data, is that there's thousands of those situations that are humanly impossible to analyze, but when you let the computer do it, there's all sorts of interesting things.
Great. Now, Jody is part of an organization that has facilitated over 100,000 conversion tests. How have you helped your customers use this type of data to actually help it bolster their online efforts?
Great question. Just like that, right? I think that there's this notion of saying, hey, all sorts of different things can happen in a shopping funnel, right? And just as Jeff alluded to, there's a lot of in-page analytics, a lot of micro conversions that you can look at, but you never really know what's going to be optimal until you test and until you get data back out of it, right? And so being able to take really quick action and say, hey, is it the fact that it does say checkout now and doesn't have a message about this return policy? and be able to test that hypothesis and immediately get data back that says, hey, is that actually making a difference? This is something that our customers and the people who are really avidly testing their shopping funnels get a lot of mileage out of, is that they can answer those questions and really find along an entire conversion path, micro or macro, all of the optimal solutions for getting someone to take an action that they want them to take on their site.
Excellent. Now, Jim, how do you strike a balance between the amount of data people are looking at so they don't drown in data and what I would call become data comatose, where they're looking at so much they just don't know what to do?
Right, the whole fire hose that you were talking about earlier. So, macro and micro data, they're both powerful. You can do a lot with both. And, I think hand in hand with big data, there's also data overload, where you can really get overwhelmed and not really know where to get started, and that stunts a lot of people when it comes to evolving their email marketing programs. So what I would recommend doing is look at the macro level behavior, figure out what data points you have there, how that's tying in, even just with cart abandonment, and get started. We just completed a survey of online retailers, and 52% said they were not sending abandoned shopping cart reminder messages, and that's a huge revenue driver for you. It doesn't take a lot of effort to get launched. And then that micro data is what's going to fuel really optimizing that communication, getting that relevance, and having that one-to-one touch about the experience and what's happening between carting and actually submitting your order. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed or struggling where to get started, let the macro view of big data put you on that path and figure out how to get your program at least launched.
Excellent. So many of us use data today in a fashion that's very reactive. We look at our web analytics, sales history, and we use that information going forward. But really, there's a lot of growth and opportunity in using data predictively to drive revenue. I was having lunch earlier with Matthew Mendring, and we were talking about this very topic, about the future of data and big data and where it's headed. And really, predictive use of data is a very effective tool that not a lot of people are really leveraging right now. So, Mike, turning to you, again, as the online retailer on the panel here, how have you used data to predictively or proactively drive revenue for your business?
Yeah, great question. For us, data is the lifeblood of the decision-making process. And we have to look at it from a number of different perspectives. Like Kevin mentioned, it's not just the sales funnel process online. It's not just what people are buying, but it's forward-looking as well. Good example of this is we just ran a sweepstakes on Facebook where we gave away $10,000 in furniture and, of course, your likeness carved in butter, because who wouldn't want that? Now, the goal wasn't
it's carved in butter.
it's carved in butter. The goal wasn't to simply acquire new fans of the brand. Part of the process when entering the sweepstakes was connecting through Facebook. And upon connecting, you had to give approval to share all of your user-like data on Facebook. At the end of the day, we're going to take all of that information in a non-personally identifiable way and start to segment it out so that I know that the people that are maybe buyers also like Crate and Barrel or NASCAR or wine. The buyers might be 23 to 30 as opposed to maybe what my gut is telling me at 35 to 50. And we're going to take that data and we're going to apply it to all of our future online marketing efforts so we can more accurately predict with reasonable good certainty which people that we attract are going to be buyers versus us just saying, well, we know that they like modern furniture, so let's target people that have also been to West Elm and Design Within Reach. I want to be a lot smarter about how we use the data, and that's one example of how we're doing it.
Great. And Tim, you have the big job title as head of big data at eBay. So I'm sure you spend a lot of time in analyzing and understanding the future of data. And so my question to you specifically is, where do you see the future of using data predictively to drive revenue?
Well, I think predictive use of data is a defining characteristic of big data. I think that just as the blue dot example, right? You harvest large volumes of data, you analyze it for patterns and for correlations, and then you use that to apply to a predictive model that puts you ahead of the game. I think is this morning, as we heard, Jeff Jordan from Andreessen Horowitz and John Donahoe both made the point that Search is version 1.0 of e-commerce. Search is reactive. And as you get into the emerging models, they're social, which is associative. They are big data, which is predictive. And it's about using the experience that we have with our customers and with our e-commerce community to anticipate the next step. So proactive and predictive nature of big data, I think, is truly defining. Excellent.
Now, Jeff, you in particular have found an incredibly useful way to use data predictively to drive revenue. Tell us about your crystal ball.
Yeah, so we use the entire fire hose of real-time data, both micro and macro, about every shopper. And the reason that we do it is we're actually able to predict whether a shopper is going to buy or not while they're shopping on your site. And to me, that's the holy grail of e-commerce. If you don't know anything else and you can do that, you're going to be way ahead of the game. The way that we do it is we analyze, everything. And so it's down to the smallest mouse movement, and actually over 400 different things per second we track about a shopper. And we're able to predict with over 95% accuracy whether someone's going to buy or not while they're on your shop right now. So it's really cool. I mean, that's awesome in its own, but it actually gets even better. From there, we're able to say, okay, if someone's not going to buy, if someone is going to buy, just let them go on their merry way, complete the purchase. But if they're not going to buy, we also use real-time data to figure out, why are they hesitating? Why aren't they going to buy? And then looking to say, what action can we do to change their mind? And so in my personal example that I talked about earlier, that can be, showing them a refund policy. It can be really anything. And you're really taking that proactive approach to the extreme. And the results that our clients have seen have been unbelievable. Several of them have doubled conversion rate. It's been amazing. And it makes total sense because you're really getting in front of a shopper while they're teetering between, buying or not buying versus trying to chase them after the fact. And so it's been incredible.
Wonderful. So obviously having data at hand is half the battle. The other half is actually using the data, and there's a statistic. Mech Labs does an analytics benchmark report every year, and this year for online retailers, it was that only 39% of online retailers routinely gain insights from their analytics. And the top 3 reasons were lack of resources, time required, and lack of understanding. So obviously tools that some of these folks present today help bridge that gap, but obviously there's still a manual piece of this, is actually using the data. So Jim, I wanted to ask you, how do you get your clients to actually start using the data that they have?
Sure. So, one question I want to ask: how many people here send order confirmation emails and shipping confirmation emails? Okay, that's great. There's always room to optimize those. Think about when someone makes an order, all the data points that you have, from the shopping process to actually purchasing, what they ordered, their average order value. Are they a first-time buyer, a repeat purchaser? There's a ton of big data for you to start with there. Another stat for you is 76% of retailers are not using that purchase-related data for an extended marketing effort past the order and shipping confirmations. So typically when I'm working with a client who wants to leverage their data to speak to their customer, enhance their customer engagement, and also drive some sales, that's a great place to start because it's very data rich. All of us are selling online pretty much. And we're all, already sending these order confirmations and shipping confirmations, and there's so much opportunity for you to give that customer a better experience, and also drive some repeat purchases.
Right. Now, Jody, similarly, when I talk to people about conversion testing and I ask them why aren't you testing, the top 2 reasons are technology limitations, or I don't know where to start or don't know what to test. Obviously, your solution helps with that technology limitation, but still leaves a gap of what do I test and how should I test. So how do you encourage your clients to use data to actually have some insight into what they're testing versus randomly throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing what sticks?
It's a great question. It's definitely the big challenge. How many of you are A/B testing your site at this point? It's a small amount. This is a big challenge that people have. What do I test? Great, there's something that's really easy that allows me to make changes, and now what do I do? I think the way to think about it is you think about what's your goal. What is your goal as a retailer? And then you try and fuse that to what is your customer's goal, right? What are they trying to do? And then there's another little intersection, and it's analytics. And you take what data you do have, and I imagine most of you are utilizing a few tools to collect different pieces of data. But you take the intersection of your goals, your customer goals, and at a very high level start to say, hey, well, what am I trying to get someone to do, and where's the value for me? And those are the areas where you want to start, right? There's big places that you can start that are super obvious, right? And it's the checkout funnel. It's calls to action, right? It's your navigation path. Are there menus where people can leave your checkout funnel where, you know, they shouldn't be able to? Why are you giving them the option to go somewhere else, right? These are really high-level areas to start thinking about. And as you start to surface data from tests, the beautiful thing about testing is that you get results, and that starts to inform new test ideas. And so you start to build this really awesome loop that starts to feed off of itself. And it's really just starting to pick some high-level conversion metrics, going after those goals first, and building tests to try and achieve those objectives.
Excellent. Now, if anyone hasn't recognized yet, the theme of Jeff's questions always seem to revolve around a lot of data. And a lot of you might be sitting here thinking, I have a hard enough time understanding the data I do have, and you're telling me to collect more. You're insane. How do you get your clients, and how do you come up with solutions that actually help make sense of all that data so that they can use it?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that you do need to be able to extract meaningful, stories and patterns. And for us, I mean, we have a team of data scientists. We use machine learning to extract all this. For a lot of you, you may not have that team. It may not be, your focus. And the natural instinct may actually be to just pull back and say, well, I'm going to collect less data, or I'm only going to, cherry pick a few points that I'm going to look at. And I think it's a huge mistake. I think there's teams out there like ours that live and breathe this stuff. It's what I've done for 15 years. I love doing it every day. And so just find someone that you're comfortable working with and get them to work with you and understand your business. And that's what we do, is really just work to help people that don't have these dedicated teams at their disposal.
Great. So one of the most frustrating aspects of any data marketer's job is actually get their own organization up to the highest levels to incorporate data into their decisions. Google used this term Hippo quite effectively a few years ago, and I don't know if anyone was at, I think it was Internet Retailer a few years ago, that a giant hippo guy that was standing there that you got to take your picture with. And the Hippo, for those of you who don't know, the acronym stands for the highest paid person in the organization. And in many companies, those are the people making the decisions about what ends up being developed or designed for a site. But in reality, they make those decisions off of their own experience, judgment, intuition, which may very well be sound. We might have some hippos in the room, maybe. But we were to challenge that concept and challenge them by using data to help make more intelligent decisions. So Jody, turning to you, obviously given this big challenge, do you have any specific examples of a client that you've been able to work with to break down some of those barriers in their organizations?
Yeah, actually, Crate & Barrel is a great success story of ours, and they started as a singular piece of the business. I apologize for the cough drop that's now in my mouth. A singular piece of the business and organization was actually doing website optimization. And because of the proliferation of platforms and tools that are really accessible and say, hey, as maybe a low-level marketer or someone who just owns a very small piece of an e-commerce site, I can actually go in and start making changes and testing things. And they actually were able to prove from this bottoms-up kind of approach that there's value in testing through a couple of big wins where they were able to surface 10% revenue gains on particular product categories. And I think the thing that we see is that there's all sorts of arguments that you can have about something, right? In terms of how you lay out a site, whether you're going to use 360-degree photos for your products, whether you're going to use video, there's so many decisions that you can make, and everyone's going to have an opinion, right? The cool thing is that now there's tools that let you answer the questions and let you resolve the arguments with actual raw data. And it's not a question of, hey, I think this is going to be best, and for my money, it doesn't get any better than the times that I get to go to my CEO and serve it up fresh and say, hey, you were wrong, man. Here it is in data right here. And the good news is that people are really responsive to actual data. When it comes down to something and you can say, hey, look, tangibly, here's a 10% lift in revenue that I can point to, the CEO doesn't care that they're wrong. They're super pumped that they were wrong, right? They're like, oh man, you have the better approach, and we have data to prove it.
Excellent. Now, Tim, you're an advocate of others to use big data. As part of eBay, how does eBay itself use data all the way up to the top of the org chart to help themselves make decisions?
So eBay Inc. is a large and diverse company. We've got eBay, PayPal, GSI, and most importantly, Magento. Yes, I did that. And it's a massive company, and we use data at all scales. We use it in the way we operate our data centers, the way we operate our customer support operations, A/B testing products before they go live, marketing services, and so forth. So we use it extensively everywhere, and we have the assets and the resources of a very large company. I think what's really exciting is how we use big data and are continuing to improve the way that we use big data to grow our merchants. As John Donahoe said this morning, we succeed when you all succeed. And as your businesses grow, that's really what drives us. And so on the eBay platform, there's a long history of extensive tools to empower merchants, and on the eBay platform we call them sellers, and help them improve the way that they list and their listings perform. GSI, the way we handle fulfillment and e-commerce and marketing services for those companies. PayPal, big data is a big part of how we create a fair and safe ecosystem of buyers and sellers exchanging email. That's money. I mean, how cool is that? And soon, expect to see big data powered services as a part of Magento.
Great. Just so I know, we just got a few more minutes and we'll be wrapping up here. I wanted Mike to kind of finish up this segment and talking about the hurdles he's faced in his own organization, and if there are any specific ones you had to overcome and how you overcame those.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. There were hurdles in the organization. Blue Dot is a very small company. If you look at the e-commerce and digital marketing team, for all intents and purposes, it's sitting here. So for me, when I started with the organization, they had things like Google Analytics running, but they weren't doing anything with the data. So when I started, it was a lot about the blocking and tackling, trying to answer some of the initial questions in a way that could help be a little bit more predictive about the way our business is going to function next week, next month, maybe next year. As we, as an organization, became more confident in the insights that data was providing, we started to bite off a little bit bigger piece of that apple. And we started to look for partnerships where other data could help us be a little bit more insightful about how we can grow the business at some sort of an exponential rate. And we've been pretty successful with that. Again, though, the challenge is, how do we manage the data? We don't have a CRM platform. Many of you guys might not, but that's cool. You've got Access, you've got Excel, you've got paper and a pen. But we also took the leap of faith that not having data in the long term is going to hurt us. So even if we can't do certain things with data right now, we collect all the data we possibly can, knowing that at some point in the future, I might need to call upon that data to help answer a question or validate a hypothesis. So overall, it's been somewhat, I wouldn't say it's revolutionary, but it's been more of an eye-opener for the organization in terms of, here are all the things that we can do with the power of data, and let's set ourselves up for success 2, 3, 4 years down the road when I maybe have the luxury of having, data scientists, if you will, to help us extract more and more from it.
Great. So what I want to ask is each of the panelists here to leave all of you with one last piece of advice that you can walk away with. Conscious of the time, we're running a couple minutes over here, so we'll try to do our best to answer these quickly and then give you guys some time for questions. But I want to start off with myself, and that is my actionable piece of advice is actually to start using the data that you have today. If you're running Magento, if you have Google Analytics set up, you already have a wealth of information at your disposal. So many people say, well, how do I get started? Where do I begin? And I would encourage you to think about the questions that you would like to know about your online customers and their behaviors. So as an example, you might want to know, what are some of my most profitable best-selling products? Now, you might look at this and look at how much revenue and transactions you're getting for a particular product, but the reality is, if you're only getting so much traffic to a product, it might not be selling, not because it's not a great seller. Might not be selling because you're not getting enough traffic to it, you're not merchandising it well. So in analytics, you can actually dig a level deeper and say, what are our most profitable products? What are our best-selling products? And if we only got more traffic to them, it could be a big hit for us. So with Magento, you have already capabilities for shopping cart abandonment. You have capabilities for using the data behind the loyalty points, order history, segmentation. These are all tools that you have at your disposal that are definitely opportunities to use the data that you already have and start leveraging it. Turn it over to Jim.
Cool. So this is a little bit motivational, but I would say find the enthusiasm. This is going to lead to sales. This is going to make you money. And you know, the more that we get into testing the test of the test, which is great, you can also start to lose a little bit of track. But like you were saying, a couple years down the line, the data can become very valuable. So if you're starting now, you're on the path to really evolve your program into something that's more robust than it is today. And that should be something we all leave here like really charged up to do. And you've got so many partners here to help you do that. Marketing platforms now are so easy for us to use. We don't have to go in and crack them open and recode things and reconfigure everything to really leverage this data and test this data and figure out what's going to work best.
Great.
Great. I'm going to change mine up from what I had initially intended, now knowing how many of you are actually A/B testing. And mine's going to be, think of 5 things that you can test on your site today and get charged up and go back to your organizations and challenge every department to do the same thing. This is all about creating a big loop of data input and output across your entire organization. And then with the great support of both Magento and Blue Acorn, you guys will all be excited and delighted to know that Optimizely will be having a nice, quick and easy plugin for Magento shops. So you guys will be able to launch those tests very, very quickly in a matter of a month or 2, we hope. So
Yep, we'll be out in May.
great.
Mike?
So I'd like to add on to that. Yes, find something to test. I'd like to say find something that you can test that you already have the tools to measure the results of it. Don't try and come up with something that you're never going to be able to manage. At the end of the day, it's better to start small sometimes and to make the data-driven insight process inherent in every sort of business decision you make. So if you have to start by just looking at traffic to the website, start there, answer some questions that way, and then grow as you become more confident. It's better sometimes to build it and let it come in the future than shooting for the moon and missing by a lot. So start small and be relevant.
Tim?
This is going to sound self-serving, but I'm going to explain it. Accept PayPal. Accept PayPal on your site. As we build big data solutions and services for the Magento community, we get much stronger correlations. When I talk about amassing historical data, well, we have a mass of historical data. The correlations and the strength of those correlations and the predictive behaviors that we can build into the product for you are stronger when you're more tied into our payment service.
Great. Jeff?
Yes, I think the amount of data that's out there can be super overwhelming, and a lot of times you don't know where to even get started. And I'm kind of up here saying like you need to collect more. But what I mean by that really is that you don't need to analyze it all. You need to find action, like ways to actually put it into action. And that doesn't always have to be through analysis. It can actually be letting computers work for you. And that's really one of the things that we do at Groundify, where you have all this gold that you're sitting on in terms of data, and we can actually monetize it for you, so make it work for you. And one of the things I'd like to do today is just give each one of you $1,000 free in extra revenue at Groundify. So if you just go to groundify.com/imagine, you can actually sign up, just drop your email list. We've got a bit of a waiting list, but when you do get going, there'll be $1,000 waiting for you in free revenue, and we'll get you going as soon as possible.
Excellent. Can I sign up for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Free money.
Sweet.